Um, so I want to give you a taste of the design and for every good design or decent design, there's probably 100 failed designs. I'm sure you're familiar with that, and all the research done. So I want to just take you through some of that. So first, I'm Didier, as Laurie said. This is me, just in case you're confused who's on stage. And I work at Uber, as you've obviously figured out, because everyone's wearing Uber t-shirts and we're pretty well branded. But, you know, as I said today, I want to give you a little bit of an insight of all the work it takes. Should I use that one? Okay, well. Okay, I have a mic now. All right, that seems to work a little better. Okay, let's keep going. So I want to give you a peek behind the scenes of the latest Uber app. It's been out there for a while, but I want to show you some of the process behind it and the efforts we've done in working. But before I do that, I want to give a little bit of context of Uber and obviously the scale at which we operate. So we're in more than 600 cities across 77 countries. And this was our gross bookings, so I have to always check. That's a lot, that's 20 billion. Yeah, there you go. In gross bookings last year in 2016. We do on average 10 million trips a day. Those numbers are pretty insane when I think about these. So it's important to keep that context in mind. And we currently have 65 million active riders. I might have to add a few there, but this is ballpark. So that is a lot of users, and that's a lot of responsibility for the entire design and research team. And that's what we mean by the real world. This has real impact, and the decisions we make and the designs we put out there have real, both positive and hopefully not too many negative consequences. So to show you how we work and how the Bangalore team here works as well, I'm going to take you through a bit of a journey of these designs. So initially, we actually decided to design the new experience with a simple twist. And it may seem obvious now, but back then it wasn't as obvious as we thought. And it was really thinking about starting at the end. And that's a simple statement, but we were always kind of obsessed with getting a car to you, and we never cared much about where you were going. But that's actually a pretty damn important consideration, especially if you think about shared rides. So this is probably what you're familiar with, and at the time, we just decided to put a big destination box and a bit of an artist recreation of this. But we also worked on our design principles and the systems behind it. So that's mostly what I'll talk about and take you through some of those. So we usually start with design principles. Those are helpful in guiding some of the decisions you make throughout the design process. And here's a few that, it's not all of them, but a few that turn out to be pretty important. So time is a luxury was a really important one and will remain important. And I really like that the team came up with this because it's both the fact that if you want something fast, typically you have to pay a little more, but also that we as Uber should not waste your time. And that's still one of my favorite parts about Uber is that I feel we give time back to folks when they use our applications as opposed to asking you time. If you think of a Facebook, Instagram, all of those products, they will ask your attention and time, and I feel that at Uber, our job is to give you time back. One of the things about habits are the rule, choice is the exception. What we meant by that is with an application that has a lot of functionality, how can we support both the new user, but also folks that use it on a daily basis for their commutes and things like that? How can we make their lives easier and make decisions that in design that really support them as well? What you want before you want it really was a bit of a futuristic bet. Like, what if we could really figure out where you're going? For me, that means in the morning, for instance, at 7:30 without a hitch, I have to take my kids to daycare. So what if Uber could assist with that? What if we could learn your patterns? Now that's super futuristic, so we didn't quite deliver on all of those, but it's still something good to keep in mind as you're designing the now and where you want to be in the future. The last one may sound simple. Joy completes our magic, but I still think that we really should have joy in the products we use. I think we all, as designers, enjoy the little touches in life that make it just a little better. I think our applications are no different, and we'll see where we've worked on bringing some of that joy. We also explored a lot around motion, and the reason being that Uber is all about movement. So you want to kind of flow through the application and make sure that we match the service we provide. So these are some renderings of how we think about moving through space and how we think of moving through the physical space as well. And I'm sure all of you here at some point have done like big information architecture maps. Probably not the most, exciting work ever. So we tried to solve a bit of that by basically doing a bitmap of functionality in VR. So we just gave some VR, Samsung VR headgear to folks and said, hey, here you can walk through the information architecture of the app, the flow charts, all of that, just to make sure we kept people engaged as well. The other thing is, obviously, you also need the basics. You need wireframes. You need to systemize, especially at this scale. You can't just go in and randomly design a product. You need to systemize and be diligent around this. And wireframes is one of those things where you can scale more readily. And as you can see some of the more simplified things, but this really helped also in working with the engineers, for example, early on, right? We love collaborating with our engineering counterparts as well, as soon as possible, so that we really make it a collaboration and not something where the final design is just handed over and hopefully coded right. So now I wanted to take you through some of the basic, steps within Uber. So one big one is selecting your ride, right? I mean, I hope you've all done it. But that was a big change for us as well as we introduced new products and the market changed. One thing that I think excites us all at Uber is how fast the entire business changes and the market changes. It didn't look the same 6 months ago. It certainly didn't look the same 2 years ago. It changes fast, and as designers, we need to be able to adapt to that. And that's also where research and testing plays such a critical role to understand and make sure that we're designing the right solution. So these were some early conceptual sketches, and we sketch a lot, both on an iPad or just on a whiteboard or on paper. It doesn't really matter what you use. 2 years ago, it was a pretty novel idea to basically be destination first, because it allowed you to very transparently show the price, a feature that is now pretty obvious and standard across all products. But here you can see some of the prototypes we created. It's still good, it's still good. I'll just keep talking. So obviously this never shipped, right? I mean, you've never seen this in the product, but these were some early explorations and prototypes. And here you can see with our research team quickly iterating and testing, even early on, even if we knew it might not be the perfect solution, because with every step you learn new things. And and here it's a mixture of a bit of a wireframe plus some visual design, but it's really to learn quickly and adjust as necessary. And now that I look at this, and these are like sort of 2 years old, there's still some ideas in here that are actually pretty exciting, so we should just do them. Here are some other ones where we started thinking about how you group certain interactions. And again, it's a pretty lo-fi prototype. We use Framer a lot. I'm sure some of you use it as well. But also native code. We work with design engineers that are at the intersection of design and engineering, which is super helpful for these kind of quick prototypes. And again, partner with research to really figure out how people react to it, but also combine it with insights we've gathered from our different markets. So this one was a fun little interaction to see if we could group certain things together. Now, the funny part is you see how the price is inside the circle. I'm sure you figured out that rupees would never fit in that. So we moved away from that solution. So that was a very quick early indication of how we changed the design pretty rapidly. And here you can start to see like the evolution to today's experience, right? And we also wanted to bring a lot of options and to the market and see if we could have people customize their ride a bit more with certain fun things. Turns out there aren't that many options, and most don't have a car seat or music or all of those things, so people would filter themselves out. But we still wanted to see how we can provide more clarity of the different vehicle types we offer. So again, a lot of different prototypes that helped us really get into the solution. A lot of iteration, a lot of different things. And through these various slides, you kind of see how we transition from one design to the next and sort of landed with the application you're familiar with today. Everyone's favorite topic. I've noticed that pickup is pretty variable here in Bangalore too. Usually have to call the driver. The first thing I learned is you call the driver. No matter what you do, you call the driver. So we spent a lot of time on this. We still didn't get it right. I think it's one of the most challenging things to get right. And I think it's because everything that is challenging in design comes together here. You're dealing with the driver, which is another human being in the equation. You're dealing with GPS that usually isn't all that great. And then you're dealing with a data connection that might also not be that great. So the way we thought about it at the time, first, we went to a similarly challenging environment, which was in China. Obviously, similar to here, side of the road was really important. So a lot of things here was trying to figure out if people could understand, like selecting a point on one or the other side of the road. Because similar to here, if you're on the wrong side, it could cost you upwards of 10 to 15 minutes and probably worse in traffic, which is terrible. So we spend a lot here understanding, again, and you see one of our research partners, Jenny, there with the designers and the design engineer who was working on the prototype. So again, super collaborative, and just going out and talking to folks and understanding the real world scenario. So this is actually the location where they were, and then we would map that onto the device itself and actually testing that. And again, really getting close to real as possible to inform the design process. What we did next was really trying to redefine some interaction patterns. So we wanted to play with, like, what if you could select certain areas and then you highlight certain things? And we're still working on this to make it better. And I think pickup is going to be one of those things that we really need to invest heavily in, because it can make or break your ride experience at the end of the day. Another fun aspect that maybe folks don't pay too much attention to, but the design team really went deep on, because it is, at the end of the day, super important. I think some of the magic early on from Uber was basically seeing your car move on the map. Although also sometimes here it doesn't move, I've noticed. But the point is, it should move. I want to give you a little bit of an insight around the kind of work we want to do and the attention to detail. So this is where we started. Obviously looks nothing like what we have in the app. But in the old app, all our vehicles were 2D. Flat image from the top, there was no real fanciness in it. And we really wanted to change that, because ultimately we feel that the more realistic we can make the display of the application, the more confidence you will have in the pickup and the car coming to you. So we started out very simple, nothing fancy, trying to adjust to the 3D world. And then we started doing these really boxy cars, because we're no 3D artists. For some reason, they're all drifting around the roundabout we have in San Francisco. But this was probably really late at night. But, this is, being a designer is also having fun, right? And exploring sort of the areas that others might think of, because we never share this, because they would say, like, what are you doing? This is a waste of time. but I actually think it is super important. And I think it is really important that as designers we get the room to be creative and explore different aspects. So some very like 80s inspired low poly cars. And then we started getting a little more fancy, and here you see how we positioned it on the map and prototyping those. For some reason we decided to add a plane. The plane never made it to the production app. We had big ideas. And here on the other side you can start to see the first versions of it, and sort of how we combine walking with your car arriving. And then the other thing was, how do you implement this? So we went back to the engineers, we said, hey, can we do a full-on 3D model of the car in the app? They just laughed at us. They're like, we are not a game. Actually, the problem was mostly, as you'll well know here, app size is super important, right? And even the other day, I was asking someone, it's like, okay, so you have like 16 gigs. And she was like, look, I need my photos. I was like, okay, fair. So we got to be mindful of these things. And obviously, we are a global company, so there's a lot of different vehicles per region. So we can't blow up the app size, and nor can we do true 3D rendering. So we went super old school and basically did a low-res PNG with all the different angles, and then based on the location of the car and the tilt level of the map, it will go to the frame that is the correct frame. I mean, it's an old school method, but this is all purely server driven, and this is how we were able to collaborate with the engineers and get a pseudo 3D car in there. But not only that, we then said, okay, we want to tint all of these cars. So this is dynamic tinting done in iOS and Android based on one graphic, and this is all of them. So what happens is that when we onboard drivers, they will specify the color of their car or it's entered. And then that gets passed on to the server, which then sends it to when your car is dispatched. Now, most cars here are white, so probably you mostly see the default car. But you can see, and this was super performant. We were able to dynamically tint it and have the color applied. And then we just had fun putting all of them on the same map, which isn't very useful, but fun anyhow. So why I share this is because this is what design looks like, right? And I think you all know this in this room, for those that are designers, that you sort of want to go spend the time to figure this out, and then also be reasonable and work with the engineers to find where you can provide the best experience for your users with the current technology. Really, we wanted to build SimCity. This is what we got. So it's not too bad, but it's not SimCity either. But as you can see, if I go back a little bit, you can see that we started to here. I'll go. We started to include people. So if you look there is a person there. So we started to think about this more too. Why? If you think of our Uber Pool product, other people are really important. They will join your vehicle. They will be in the vehicle with you. So it's going to be more and more important. So we'll keep investing in this as well. So that was a little bit diving deep into a very small part of the application, but also a very critical part of the experience. I want to talk a little bit about the on-trip experience as well, because when we started, we're like, okay, you use the app for like 30 seconds to 2 minutes at most, and then you're in the car. Well, what are some things we can do while you're on trip? Turns out here, you're best off just checking email and working, but in other situations, we wanted to explore different ways of providing functionality. And again, you can sort of see how this translated into what's today in the app, but there were a lot of ideas around providing different things and how the interaction model works and how we make sure that all your functionality is there, and also provide insights during the trip. And here on that side, you see sort of where we landed with that. But again, a lot of explorations across the board. Not only that, a system like that, like our feed on trip, you need to systemize. So what we did is create these tools where you can basically, adjust the variables in real time. So this was a quick web tool that we built. So not everything has to be native code immediately. You can sort of see how this works and how you would create a system with different variables. So we do this a lot, especially in things that need to be scalable and more flexible in nature. We also had some amazing ideas that never made it. So one is, voice. You always have to design a weather app. No matter which company you work at, you always have to do a weather app. So we did a weather app. But the one is still my favorite, and we do some of this, but we thought about, like, what if we could give you an overview of all the trips you've done and sort of do a data visualization. Of course, once we showed this to the engineers, they were, hell's no, this is not happening, you're crazy. A bit of a performance issue. But, again, this is more about letting creativity speak and understand where we want to take this in the future. So I also wanted to talk a little bit about, going through visual explorations. Because at the end of the day, all our users use the app mostly, and you want to have a good system in place of how you think about bringing some aesthetic consistency as well. So we started out with, I'm sure you're familiar with this, like mood boards or other things that you want to get inspired by. And obviously we took a lot of inspiration from some awesome dashboards like 80s Japanese vehicles, 60s and 70s European vehicles, but also just other things that we thought were interesting in terms of spatial organization and how you look at typefaces and other things. So we started out doing, well, it's a little washed out here, but we started thinking about, like, okay, what are all the components and how do we want to bring the visual style to it? And at this time, we were really also looking, maybe we should have a night mode in the app versus a daytime mode. So really flexing the system and exploring those things. We sort of landed here, which was really around, focusing on movement and forward motion, because we're taking you from A to B. And that's really the sense we wanted to give, both in terms of how we do the visuals and other things that you really feel like you're moving through the flow and are able to complete your requests quickly and reliably. So we had a lot of fun, getting to the core of this and really developing the visual language that would help us with other features as well and things we were working on. Color was another one. Now, obviously, none of these made it, but we wanted to see how flexible the system was. What could we do in different ways and different colors? So that was pretty fun too. As I mentioned, I said it quite a few times, prototyping is super key to what we do. And this is Framer, and we actually started systemizing a lot of the interactions that we work on and the things that we want to reuse, right? So all the 3D vehicles, the mapping, the things like that is actually something that we released internally for other designers to use and to contribute to. So it's still used today for different things like navigation or different explorations we want to do on map-based things. It shows you the importance of being able to do this, and we've gotten really good at also involving other stakeholders, so like research up front, to deliver this and actually have dynamic prototypes that also are easily localizable, right? We don't want to just go ahead and test an English language prototype. We want to be relevant to where we're testing. So then we started, documenting all of this and putting it together throughout the system. So here you see some of the final results with the drawings we did and all of those things. And then here you sort of see where we were, where we ultimately landed. And on the feed as well, some of the things that we implemented and the standards we wanted to set. So that was really, really important. So, and then you can't design without having a full-on system for larger teams to use. Obviously, Uber design is a relatively big team, So you need to have systems in place where you document this and have your own design system. So this is part of that, where we put everything together on a website for folks across everywhere to have it accessible. We redid our entire iconography, and we might evolve that even a bit more as well going forward. And here you can see all the icons that we developed originally, and that's also part of how you design the system. So some of the icons worked really well. Some of them some are still figuring out. We actually went on the street in Bangalore and tested some of these icons. And the one you see right here, the one with the three things, 3 lines. So actually it means filter. Everyone said Wi-Fi, 100%. So I think we're going to change it. let's change that icon. Another thing, as I mentioned, is like motion and how we use motion, but also how sometimes we don't use motion, because it all depends. If you have the latest iPhone, this may be great. If you're on a Android device with a lower CPU, this might actually not be so great. So again, being mindful of when you use it, how you use it, and what your strategy is in using motion. And this is, as I mentioned, the platform website we developed for the team, the entire team, and we're still investing a lot in this because we want every new designer that joins, a researcher or one of our content strategists, or even engineers, doesn't matter where you sit in the organization, to have a jump start, right? Like from the folks that are going to join the design team here in Bangalore to new folks we're adding across the globe. So we're investing heavily in this, and I think design systems are a big topic these days, and we're also really keen on making that better, especially as it comes to being globally relevant, because not everything that works in San Francisco works across the globe. So I wanted to end with this video that sort of captures the experience. So we're super excited to now take it to the next level and actually, not again, you've seen it. So first I'll say thank you. Thank you for your attention, absolutely. And then I will also say that we're super excited to invest in this year, the next year, and also you'll hear a little bit later how we're doing full-on product development here in Bangalore. The team is super excited to share some of the things that we're doing, and we're continuously investing in that. And I think 2018 will definitely be a year of global focus and really coming together. So thank you. Hashtags.
All right, folks, so if we have, we're just going to have about 8 minutes of questions. So if anyone has a question, raise your hand, you'll answer in the mic, and Didier will answer it.
One question that I had, that you told about the entire process, but a fundamental question that I had, that why did you decide to redesign?
Good question. I think it's always good to question why something needs to be redesigned. I think one thing I've definitely learned in my time at Uber is that this industry, this market changes incredibly fast. And I think it's important to really understand the changes that are happening, right? Like I mentioned earlier, I don't think ride-sharing looked the same 2 years ago or even 6 months ago. And I think we as designers and researchers have a responsibility to understand where we're going, not only for ride-sharing, but actually as a society, or how transportation is changing across the globe. I mean, my habits have definitely changed. I'm sure most of your habits have changed with ride-sharing. So I think we owe it to ourselves to keep innovating in that space while also be realistic. And I think there was also, if you think about like transparency in general. So we want to be upfront and give you a price, or we want to tell you when you're going to get somewhere. Those required some fundamental shifts in how we think about the product, and also we wanted to make sure that we drove adoption across the board, where some of the products like Uber Pool come in. And I think that at some point starts to really require that you rethink some of these things. And I think Uber is a very young company. It was founded in 2010, but it's only grown exponentially over the last 3 to 4 years. So invariably, you also, you design something, and 6 months later, it could, you could have too much experience depth or too much technical depth. So I think it's now that we start to understand a little more. It's similar to, in many ways, how operating systems evolve. They start out and then they get better and better, both in terms of, Windows systems you use, or iOS if you compare it to some years ago. So I think we owe it to ourselves to innovate and keep up with the pace at which society is changing and transportation is changing as well.
Okay, great. We got another question over here.
All right.
Hi there. Thank you for the presentation. It was really cool. One of the questions I had, you mentioned that there's going to be a lot more investment in countries like India. So is there going to be an attention to web app a lot more? Are you guys going to be designing for non-app? And if it is web app, would you be considering React Native or React? And what would your design thinking would change based on if it's going to be a web app?
So obviously we have the M.Uber product out in the market today, and actually I saw some folks using it yesterday because a connection was a little challenging, and it worked like a breeze. I think to answer your question, usually I try to stay away from technical debates on which platform is best to use, whether that's React Native or others. I think at the end of the day, more and more I'm convinced that the right experience for the right context can be designed. And I think the technology you use for that is whatever can deliver that experience. So if that's React Native, I think that could make sense. But obviously, not being an engineer, I'll leave it up to the experts to decide that. But I think, from being out in the field and the research that has been done, I think we'll see a lot of evolution on, sort of the full-on web browser versus native product. I'm actually really excited in some of the technologies, including React Native. We've obviously seen fairly successful companies do that. So this is definitely something that is in, that the Bangalore team is working super hard on. And I think, and that's why we have designers and researchers here to really, add to that and figure out what the right solution will be. I'm not 100% sure what that will be, but I think it will change a lot this year, for sure.
Okay, here we go.
Hello.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, my name is Colby. Okay, so I wanted to, I like all of the designs you have done, but there is one thing is, why do you design for the people who have a disability? For example, people, okay, fine, you are making a design for the people who are of 80% of normal, but what about 20% of the people who have the disability like for the hearing impaired? Because what happens is, if you book a cab, like for example, if you get away from the family, and you have to take care of your child, and you have to be independent, but if I book a cab and I won't be able to contact the driver, so I have to make sure the driver pick me up at the point of the location.
I'm super happy you brought that up because this is very important. If we say transportation for all, we want to be as inclusive as possible. So we have teams focused on accessibility as well, and I think the entire mobile space is working on better solutions for that and better assist. And better assist to provide the right type of support and the right type of accessibility. And we have folks dedicated to that, and it's actually also you have all the teams here, so I think it's good for them to hear this too, and to make sure that when we develop these products that we keep that in mind. but it's definitely something we care a lot about, and making sure our product is accessible and leveraging as much as possible some of the OS level support that is provided. So as designers and researchers, this is super important to us. So we'll keep focusing on that and making sure that oh, sorry. I know, I mean, the mic, it's a bit weird to put the mic in my face. But I really appreciate you bringing this to the forefront, and it's something that we want to invest in.
Okay.
My question here is regarding the global phenomena. So what happens here is Uber, considering it's a global app, and it is being used by communities and regions. So how do you strike a balance between what is local, like how much percentage of local design should be there, yet maintaining the global design and the coherence of the app?
I think you bring up one of our biggest challenges, and I think it's really important for us to figure this out. I think this is something that the Bangalore design team and research team is also investing in, and our commitment to making sure we build a platform for the future where we still have certain interaction paradigms and levels of design that we would like to see across the globe, but also make sure that we really invest in some of the local differences and challenges that exist. I mean, just being out here, obviously it is super clear that the challenges are different. Some are similar. I love the idea of going from A to B and having reliable and affordable transportation is a very global need. However, the differences are certainly something to take into consideration. And I think that's why we're investing here in Bangalore, not just from an engineering perspective, but really from a design and research perspective. And Saswati, who's going to talk next, will definitely give you an overview of how we make sure that we have the right insights. And this is something that is a big area of investment for us as well in getting that right. And it will, I think it's a pretty hard thing to do right, but I believe we can do it with all the amazing folks here. I mean, you are part of the design community here as well. So we look forward to collaborating and making sure that we do invest in that across not just here, but also in other markets that have exciting challenges for us to figure out.
Okay, we just have 2 more questions, and then you can always ask him questions at the end.
At the system level of Uber, how you decide to give power to the stakeholder? What are the parameters? How it changes with the behavior of the consumer and driver?
Okay, one more time.
Yeah.
I'm going to just try to extract. Take your time, there's no rush.
Okay.
I mean, the elevator only fits 6 people down, so we're good. Go ahead.
At the system level of Uber, how you decide to give power to the stakeholder? What are the parameters and how it changes with the behavior of the consumer and driver?
So when you say power to the stakeholders, what do you mean by that?
Power as in what are the power like the drivers are having like in getting the ride, like what are the parameters he should have. So from the perspective of a driver.
Okay. So if I get it right a little bit, and I'm going to paraphrase, are you interested in the relationship of rider to driver and how each affect the other?
Yeah, sort of.
That's one of my favorite topics. Because I think we need to spend a lot more time. I think we're all realizing that this experience is actually the same coin, just a different side. And I'll give you a quick example. So a year ago, back in San Francisco, I decided to become an Uber driver. So, and I don't tell people I work at Uber. I just put the stickers on and I go drive. I do take out the kids' seats first, though. But I learned a ton about that. Actually, I learned also about our own design decisions on the rider side. So for instance, we didn't make ratings mandatory anymore. So as a driver, I was doing like 30 trips and I got like 5 ratings. I was like, what's up with that? Turns out we designed it that way. So that's just a quick example of how one thing affects the other side. And I think we're being much more thoughtful around how these two things relate. And it's very delicate because you can overshoot one way or the other. But I think that we are becoming way more one design team. So even here in Bangalore as well, we have folks focused on the rider side, we have folks focused on the driver side, and actually just simply communicating and sharing your experiences and being collaborative. So not treating it as two different sides of the same coin. It's really the same coin. And and it's one of our biggest challenges for design. And again, research can really help with that to understand how these decisions affect this thing. And I think it's again, one of the most challenging and exciting things for us to understand.
Okay, here we go.
Oh,
Hi.
hey, sorry.
There is a lot of discussion now about self-driving cars. So what is your thoughts on this, and what are the major challenges for designing around a self-driving car experience?
So say that one more time, the last part.
The self-driving cars. So what are the challenges of designing for a self-driving car experience?
So obviously I'm not on the self-driving team, so I can't answer too many questions about that because I simply don't know. They don't even talk to me. So I wish they did. I'm sorry, but I'll give you one example, right? That I always think about. Like, also self-driving cars in Bangalore is like 50 years away before they figure out how to do that. But I think just thinking about pickup and how this works across the globe, right? Like, you're negotiating with another person most of the time. You're talking to the driver, you're doing certain things, you're looking at an application. And I was thinking about this, I'm like, a self-driving car will never stop because every stop is illegal. So that's one example. And I truly believe that the problems we're solving, generally speaking, in our rider experience are actually going to inform the future. But that's a faraway future. And I think we have a lot more to do to just make our experience better here and now. All right, good. Thank you so much. Thank you. I'll be around, so come grab me if you have more questions.